Hi, I'm Matt Ingenthrone, Senior Director in Engineering here at Couchbase, and with me today is...
Sergey Evseev, consultant software engineer, doing several things and including Ruby SDK.
Great, thanks, Sergey. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to give you an overview of the Ruby SDK itself. Then we'll talk a little bit about the simplicity of it when working with Ruby. A lot of what we try to do is keep things easy to use in your target platform. And then Sergey will go through a little bit of a demo. So with that, let me kind of jump into an overview. So from an overview perspective, before I talk specifically about the SDK, let me give you just a quick sense of what to Couchbase an SDK is. So in Couchbase, our goal with the SDKs is really to give you a programming model that spans everything that exists in that Couchbase cluster. So when you're programming against Couchbase, whether it's a single node on your laptop, or a cluster running in Couchbase Cloud or a cluster running in Kubernetes, from your application's perspective, it's just a Couchbase cluster. You don't need to know a lot of the details. So that means that we need to do things like adapt to the change in the cluster over the time as you add and remove nodes or even move across upgrades. The SDK handles a lot of that for you. We also try to mask, transient failure conditions. So imagine that there's just a little bit of a network blip of some sort, and the operation that you're trying to carry out is idempotent, meaning that it's safe to retry. We want to be able to mask that error from your application. You shouldn't have to rebuild connections, any of those details. The SDK handles all of that for you. And then finally, what we want to be able to do is connect high-level platform concepts to what is happening inside Couchbase as a document database. So that means that we want to do things like take Ruby objects and be able to map them straight into JSON without necessarily having to write any specific mapping code. The great news, if you're a Rubyist, is that Ruby is back. So earlier this year, we launched SDK 3.0. And for SDK 3.0, we wanted to modernize and prep for the future. So Ruby is now up to the 3.0 level and a fully supported SDK from Couchbase. So what we wanted to do with 3.0 was resync with sort of the state of the art. The platform languages have changed a bit, meaning not so much with Ruby, but with some of the other languages, they'd gotten new features. They had modern async, they had modern needs, and we needed to update our API to work with those. We also wanted to simplify and consolidate. So Couchbase has added a number of capabilities to the platform over the course of time. So we wanted to rethink how we were presenting the API surface area. Our goal is, as mentioned, really we want to keep things very, very simple to use, but give you the power to kind of dive in where necessary. And you'll see some of that in the code in a bit. We also wanted to prepare for the future. Couchbase is in the process of adding Couchbase collections to 7.0, and it's available as a developer preview feature right now in 6.5 and 6.6. But also get ready for the new durability options, probably going to add transactions at some point, and even little things like Bootstrap for Couchbase Cloud. And of course, over the course of time, you always have a few little things that you want to fix bugs in. Remove long-standing bugs that require an interface change that you don't want to do without a breaking changes release. So in SDK 3, we've done a few of those as well. But the great thing with respect to you as a Ruby developer is that Ruby is now back up to this level, like all of the other Couchbase SDKs. So let's show a little bit of the API and talk about how simple it is. So the great thing is, if you're just wanting to do an upsert of a document, it's as simple as calling collection.upsert. So even in the base case that you're not actually using Couchbase collections, there's always a default collection, which allows you to access things that might just be in a bucket, maybe from an upgrade from an earlier version. So that's off of the collection object in Ruby. So as you're seeing here on the left, a collection upsert creating a new document named document key, where the author is Mike. In the newer SDKs, error handling, and error handling, of course, is always a big thing in the way that you do application development. is handled mainly through exceptions or errors in Ruby raised back to the application. So here you see that if you tried to retrieve a document and there's a possibility that it might not exist and you want to handle that, you would do that with a begin end and a rescue clause on that particular section. As far as retrieving documents, it's also very simple. You specify in the case of the SDK3 API, this is a change from earlier Ruby SDKs. We actually have result objects that are that contain the result of a request of a KV operation, something like a collection.get. We have result objects for the full API. So in this case, what you're seeing is we're retrieving the document named document key, and then grabbing the title out of it. And if it's not found, that would be something that you would need to handle through a rescue block. One of the big features that we had people asking for with the upgrade of Ruby to SDK3 was subdocument operations. So Couchbase has had, since I think version 4.5, a set of subdocument operations within the system. So that means that you can do things like, if you have a large object, you can reach in and just grab a couple of fields out of a large object. So what you're seeing there in the upper left is on the document 123, or customer 123, we're grabbing addresses.delivery.country, and we can retrieve just that item out of that document. So if it's a large, complex document, that allows us to really just have the network transport for just that one small item. But you can do a bunch of other powerful things with the subdocument API. You can also do things like retrieve and check, as you see in the lower left. So this is a combination of two commands at the same time. I want to retrieve the country, and I want to see if a particular field exists or not. You can also do things, as you see on the right, like mutate. You can modify a document that is already stored inside the system. So in this case, what we're doing is we're getting a particular field, and we're setting a field against the API. And same thing, lower right, we're removing a field and replacing a field. So pretty neat that you're able to do multiple things inside a single operation. Of course, one of the more powerful things in Couchbase is support for Nickel or SQL against the full set of documents. So in this case, what you see is we're doing a very simple query. Select star from travel sample limit 10. And then you receive a set of rows back, and as you would expect in Ruby, you have a really simple iterator. You can just iterate over the rows that come back. There are some other options for being able to get into query metrics and so forth, definitely, but this was just showing a pretty simple example. But more often, you might actually have a scenario where maybe you have a query that you want to use a parameter as a named parameter to protect your SQL statement from somebody trying to modify it with a string that they shouldn't be allowed to. So in this case, what you're seeing is us using the query parameters and making a query for airport where the country is France. So a name parameter that might come in a typical application that may actually come from your app. Finally, just to give one other quick example, there's access to the full text search API. So that means Couchbase in the platform has a full text search API. If you define an index, think of this as an index over the data, then you can do the kind of search where it's just a free-form text search. In this case, we're doing search for hop beer. And it comes back with a number of different rows, and it tells us even what the score is, how much my search query matched to that. And as you can see in the Ruby case, again, it's very simple. I just have a set of rows. I can iterate over those rows. And Sergey is going to show this in a much more interesting way. And search is very capable. It has even things like facets, so you can categorize beers maybe by their type of beer. So with that, I want to turn it over to Sergey to do a quick demonstration. Sergey, you want to walk us through what the app is?
Yeah, I'm going to walk through a simple web application written in Sinatra framework, and it implements a small bookshelf application for looking for the books and listing them and adding reviews. This is a pretty basic Sinatra application, which consists of three main parts. One of them is a definition of the endpoints, which are HTTP routes here in the bookshelf.rb. Then the most interesting part is storage.rb. This is where we connect to the database and perform our data operations. And then a couple of files which in charge of presentation logic, dealing with filtering data and rendering it on the web page. So when you open the application, first thing you see is just a list of all the books in the database. This is done by running this list books action of the storage. And in turn, it runs a nickel query, which pulls everything sorted by publication year and paginated. So when I click here, for instance, page 12, it passes the parameter and slides in the database and pull the correct page. Then when you open the book, in addition to description and author, you also see some additional information about the book, and you have an option to leave your review as a user. Because we do not need to pull a whole document to add a review, we can use subdocument operation. Here in add review action, we build the object and prepend it to reviews array inside the document. The document itself is pretty big and it won't be efficient to load it and update it using regular get and set operation. Here's the how the single document looks like. Another interesting feature, as Matt previously mentioned, is a full text search. On the main page, you have text field where you can type your search request. It will perform server-side search and return your results. We render at most 3 pages of results, and again, search allows you to paginate results. Interesting feature here, you can notice that in some cases we highlight the search request in the results. This is done by the highlighting feature, where we enable it when we create a search request, enumerate all the fields we want to highlight, and then in the presenter for search results, we have additional logic to first check if this particular field, like description, has anything highlighted, and then we render it like here. Otherwise, we might just lazily load the document and render original description. Again, we do not need to pull whole document here, and we use projected gets, and essentially what it does, it's again run subdocument operation, but for the user in the APIs is just a get with extra options where you enumerate the fields you want to render, and result you receive in here, it looks like exactly like you get in a document, just not all the data there. In presenters, we also have extra logic for our complex data, because the data itself pulled from the Goodreads API, and for instance, to render author, we pull the list of the authors, transformed, and then on the form you can just call single method and render the list of author or single author. This is not everything about the application. You can go and look on the GitHub whole repository and discover other features we demonstrate here, like management APIs and data loading. So I think that's pretty much it for this overview. So.
Thank you, Sergey. So if you're interested in more information, you'll see many more examples and some documentation on our doc site, docs.couchbase.com, of course. And this particular code sample is up on Couchbase Labs as an example. So a lot more information out there. Of course, if you have any questions, you can certainly ask here in the session. And we look forward to, or in the Couchbase forums, and we look forward to answering any of your questions. Again, thank you very much for attending.